Does your entropy gameplay look like this? Or like this? How about like this? Well, I'm here to show you today in 5 easy steps how to go from this to this. So stick around, because I know you won't want to miss what I have to say. So here are 5 tips that I would give to anybody who's trying to improve their gameplay on an entropy class. So these tips in many ways build upon one another, so you're going to want to listen to all of them in order. Now, the first tip that I'm going to give you is that you should learn the boss's attack patterns to know your windows. People always say that Hitmaster classes are way better than Entropy classes in Prog, and as people start learning the raid more, Entropy gets stronger. And this is true. Unlike Hitmaster classes, you need to be in the right position for your attacks, whether that's at the front or at the back. So you need to know boss's behaviors in order to position yourself correctly. These are things like knowing which attacks a boss will be in animation for a long time. Like in Sonnavale, his 3 slams is a big opening for somebody to attack the back. Or in Akan Gate 2, when he throws out 2 front slams, you know he's always going to be flying the other direction to throw out a 3rd slam. So you're going to want to position yourself in the place where he will be before he even gets there. You need to know the ins and outs of every fight in order to be able to position yourself correctly for your back and front attacks. This leads me to tip number 2, which is that you should play entropy classes kind of like a turn-based game. This is true for all entropy classes, but especially the ones that are more burst focused. When it comes to positioning, you want to make sure that the boss isn't going to be turning around randomly as you're gearing up for a front or back attack. In most cases, bosses don't turn when they're attacking, so you should wait for them to attack before you let off your attack. The reason why this is especially important for more burstier entropy classes is that your big skills usually come with long cooldowns. So if you miss a back attack on one of those big skills, it'll cause your DPS to drop significantly. If you look at this example in Triangle, you'll notice that I start charging up my Lightning Tiger Strike when the boss is going for his charge attack. That's because I know that when the boss is going for that attack, he will go in a set direction, allowing me the time to charge up my Tiger Strike and land that back attack. Of course, while for the most part you will want to play your class like a turn-based game, there are times when you'll need to attack out of order because you want to keep your uptime high, or you need to fit an attack inside of a buff window. So that leads to my 3rd tip. Prioritize your big attacks. Whether you're a burst class or a constant DPS class, you have attacks that do more damage than others. For example, for Striker, that's Lightning Tiger Strike. For Sorks, that's Doomsday. For Reapers, that's Glowing Brand and Rage Spear, etc., etc. You want to prioritize those attacks over others and make sure you don't use those attacks unless you're pretty sure that they're going to hit. One of the biggest misconceptions about DPS uptime is that as long as you're hitting the boss consistently and constantly, your DPS uptime is good. That is just not true, especially for entropy classes. Even if you're constantly hitting the boss, if you're missing all your big attack skills on the back, you'll do way less damage. As I mentioned in tip number 2, play the game like a turn-based game and make sure that when you use those big skills, it is your turn to hit, to make sure that you guarantee that front or back attack. With your other smaller skills that do less damage, you can take those risks to hit when you aren't entirely sure if they'll land on the front or the back. That way, even if you do miss those skills, your DPS isn't affected too much. In this example, you'll see that I use my Spiral Impact and Call of the Wind God even if I feel like the boss is going to turn around or move away. That's because if I hit it, it'll help my damage uptime, but if I miss it, it's not a big deal. DPS uptime as a back attack is all about risk reward. Assess whether or not it's worth taking the risk of throwing out an attack or missing that back or front attack. Now, taking risks doesn't only apply to making sure your attack hits or not, but it also means that you should take calculated risks for when you should tank damage and get hit to land that front or back attack, or whether you should hold those attacks and avoid taking damage. In Lost Ark, I would say that you should consider your HP as a resource, like your mana. You can expend your total HP to deal more damage. And what I mean by this is that you should be thinking about what attacks you can tank in order to increase your DPS uptime. So my tip number 4 is to use your HP like a resource. Take Belshazzar Gate 2, for instance. This boss moves a ton and teleports a lot, so finding windows to DPS can be tough sometimes. But there is one move where the boss stands still and spins in place for quite a while. In this case, I would choose to either back off and avoid damage, but that would affect my DPS uptime. Or I could stand in this spin and tank it to keep my DPS uptime up. In this case, I know I won't die, and I have a good number of potions, so I choose to stand in it to capitalize on the fact that I know it won't turn. I use my HP to increase my damage uptime and guarantee that back attack. This is especially important with shields as well. If you have a shield on, you pretty much don't even need to think about it. Just take the hits and deal your damage. This is a basic fundamental of doing high damage for any class, but it's especially important for entropy classes because we need to take advantage of every window that we can get to where the boss is facing one direction and stays in that direction to guarantee our positional attacks. Hitmasters don't care if the boss turns, so they have a lot more opportunities to attack. But for entropy classes, we don't have this luxury. Now, the last and final tip in this video combines the knowledge from the previous tips, and this is to know your super armors and apply them correctly. Now, you've learned about boss attack patterns. You learned how to prioritize skills to do the most damage. You've learned to greed damage and used your HP as a resource depending on the boss's attacks. Now, you'll need to learn which skills have immunities, otherwise known as super armors, and which attacks you can eat with those immunities to keep your uptime. In this game, there's 3 levels of immunities. The first level is paralysis immunity. This will prevent you from being staggered by attacks. Most attacks in the game only knock you back, so you can use this immunity to prevent that and do damage. The second level is knock-up immunity, which prevents you from getting knocked up in the air. These attacks are like the laser patterns in Gate 3 Belshazzar, or the slams that Akan does whenever he slams down his scythe. Those attacks will knock you up. You want to use your knock-up immunity to tank those attacks and use your HP as a resource to do more damage. The third level is stun immunity, which prevents you from getting stunned. An example of this type of attack is the Earthquake Slam that Akan does in Gate 3. Every class actually has access to a stun immune skill, which is their awakening. So you want to use your awakening to prevent getting stunned by those attacks. The last thing to note is that as you move higher in immunity levels, those attacks will also be immune to the lower level attacks. For example, your level 3 immune awakening will also let you tank knock-up skills and knock-back skills. So you want to use your awakening to greed any of those types of attacks. So, those are the tips for increasing your DPS as an entropy class. Now, with that, I actually have one final tip for you guys who have stayed until the end of the video. Just for you special guys. So, if you hit that sub button right over there, and hit that like button as well, that actually offers you a 5% increase to your total damage on your Lost Ark account. I know, crazy, but I worked out with Smilegate to make this happen. So if you want an increase to your damage, hit that like button, hit that sub button, ring the bell for notifications, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace out.